context of those past 10 years. So let's get a little bit into your history here. So
meat and potatoes. All right.
Waveform was not the past 10 years by any means. It was quite recently. So let's go back to the beginning. What did that look like?
Oh, okay. So gaming, much like any aspiring individual, grow up gaming. Parents bought me Super Nintendo, was great. PlayStation, played a lot of console games. Didn't have a PC.
No.
I would go to an internet cafe. So I grew up in Chinatown, and I would go to shopkeeps, and I would tell them I'd sweep their floors for like $1 or $2. And then in Chinatown, the Dragon City Mall used to have an internet cafe, and it was $1 or $2 for an hour of play. So I would go sweep a floor, then go play for an hour. So I started playing like Diablo 2, Counter-Strike 1. I think it was like 4 at the time. I wasn't good, but I never used a PC before. But I'm like, I see all these guys, like these older people play these games, and I'm like, yeah,
this is what I want.
I'm like, I want this, right? So, it was a lot of fun. But I grew up playing console games and playing them competitively. Call of Duty is where I found most of my success through game battles when it came out. 2006, 2007, started competing at MLG events, and I was like, I remember competing at this event in North Carolina, and I looked up at one of the production stagehands, and I was like 12 at the time, like 12 or 13, right? And I'm playing, and I'm thinking back to myself, I'm like, man, if I win, it's a prize pool split between me and 4 other guys, or 3 other guys, and then my mom, because my mom drove me, because my mom had to be paid for her time and her gas and all of that stuff.
Right.
So I'm like, what am I taking home? So I asked the guy, I'm like, hey buddy, like this is a little like, out of left field, but like, how much do you make for this weekend of work? And he's like, oh, a couple, maybe like $1,000 or so, plus like food and all these things. I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, yeah.
I can be making $1,000.
I was like $1,000. I can buy 4 Xboxes.
That's
right.
That's 4 digits.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm like that's more than I
more
knew.
money than
right.
I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to being a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I went through my high school career. Still played competitively. Still played online tournaments, which was really cool. Using my old tag and Xbox and playing through. But then I found my love of PC gaming. I played Dota seldomly. Growing up, and then I started playing more and more of Dota through high school. And it wasn't until 2011 that I started, 2010, 2009, I started playing StarCraft, and then StarCraft 2 released. And there was a StarCraft event in Toronto.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I really want to like try to go help out and stuff like that. So I helped out there, and then League of Legends started coming out. So I helped out there, and I started helping out the viewing events and socials and all these different things, and kind of get to know the community. And I'm like, wow, like this is really cool. But all the while I went through my education as like, I still want to be a lawyer. I still want to be a businessman. I still want to pursue that, because I had a love of arguing, which is pretty funny. But I was like, okay, cool. But I went through university. I went to school. I guess it's rebranded to OnTech University in Oshawa. So that's where I grew up. And it was a lot of fun. I got to help a gaming club kind of explore. Started a kind of event and rebranded an event called Land War X. We became like the largest one in Ontario, and it was really cool. Large sponsors, Canada Computers,
That's
MSI.
still running, right?
I honestly, they've rebranded again to another event called E-Arena. I haven't checked it out in the last couple of years.
I see. Okay.
But as far as I know, it's still running, but it's not something that I've seen supported by much else. So with the kind of dichotomy of how the school works, there's 2 schools on campus. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I'm going to Durham College. Yep. So it's Durham College and what used to be UOIT, Ontario University of Ontario Institute of Technology. So now it's rebranded to Ontario Tech University.
Okay. I didn't know that you actually used to compete.
Yeah. No, not a lot of people do. Not a lot of people do.
I feel like our circles probably crossed at some point before this. I got my start really in StarCraft. I played that for a good 3-4 years once StarCraft 2 came out. So I mean, I'm sure at some point we must have crossed paths doing something else.
Especially if you've gone to any event in Toronto with StarCraft. I went as a fan. Right. I would go to attend as an attendee and viewer. It was a lot of fun, especially growing with that community. And there's a wonderful kind of barcraft that goes around in Toronto as well. They have a great lively community that kind of supports that. But that's kind of how I got my start. And I started kind of positioning myself as okay, I've worked here, and I play these different games. I'm not an expert in any individual field, right? I rip tickets. I gaffed cables down. Cool. But I started learning more. I started absorbing more. I started putting myself out there. And as I started doing LAN war, that's kind of what put me on the map. And but esports, as you guys know, it was like the industry here and the ecosystem in Canada, specifically Toronto, was missing. Now there was a lot of different organizations at the time. There was a lot of people to work for, but the livelihood, the working for pay, salary.
Oh yeah, non-existent.
Yeah, it was hard. It was rough, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm 22 at the time, and I'm like, I'm graduating soon, and I'm like, ah, shit. What do I do, right? Like now I found my love, right? Like I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. Like what do I do? So I actually ended up becoming an analyst for financial institutions. So I became a private analyst for people's portfolios. I started working towards my CFA, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna be a salary man and commute into downtown Toronto, work in the financial district, put on a suit and tie, 9 to 5 every day. Yeah. I don't think I've put on a suit other than for weddings since then. Yeah.
That's an achievement. Achievement unlocked.
Right.
There you go.
I wear dress shirts now and then, depending on the situation, but I was unhappy. I was really unhappy. I spent 9.5 months there, and I was the lowest I've ever been.
Wow.
And truth be told, it was like, okay, the money's great, had a great relationship, an apartment, had everything that I could have asked for, but I just wasn't happy, and I couldn't pinpoint it, and I felt unfulfilled. So I remember walking to my mentor, him and I still talk to this day, George. I walked into his office that day, and I was like, hey, by the way, I quit. And he's like, John, you're here not even a year.
Yeah.
Like your Christmas bonus is coming up. Like what's happening? And so I explained it to him. I sat down and explained it to him.
Wow, you couldn't even wait for Christmas or nothing?
No,
Wow.
I didn't even give 2 weeks. Like that's something that I kind of regret, because I'm like, that put him in a tough position, right? Because that's third quarter. I quitted back in end of August, early September. And I'm like, that's a really rough time for any portfolio management company, right? An investment firm. Because like everyone's like, we're looking towards the end of the year to pay out their dividends, right? Or cash out. So I put him in a really bad spot because I had 10 clients that were like really successful, and they all loved me. So it's like, well,
so now you're not just burning one bridge, you're burning all the bridges.
I'm burning 11.
Bridge.
I'm burning 11.
There you go.
Right. So I tried to tell him, like, look, I'll help transition as much as possible, but like it's really tough. And I took a 4-hour walk through Toronto.
Wow.
I left the office that day. I'm like, just have an intern pack up my desk for me and just ship everything back to my apartment, because I'm not going to even deal with it. Yeah. I'm just going to take a walk. And I remember walking through Toronto for 4.5 hours or so. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Right.
You hadn't even thought about the next step.
No plan. No, this is the first time, in all honesty, I guess in my adult life, where I'm like, I don't have a plan.
Just jumping out of the plane without a parachute.
Yeah, no parachute, right? This is a battle royale where I'm the first one to die.
Hope I find one on the way down.
Yeah. So it's like, it was a lot. It was really rough. But no, I received a phone call where I was requested to go on a trip down to LA for Riot Games. And that was really cool. It was a collegiate summit. I was one of 50 students, or 150 students, I believe, which was really cool. So it kind of opened my eyes. It was the last time they actually did a collegiate summit, I believe. But this was 2015, and I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with what everyone was trying to do and what they were trying to accomplish, what I had strived for, with LAN war. And I was like, all these guys, young 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, or even older than I was, were pursuing this goal of making gaming work for them. And I was like, oh, wow, these guys, the passion was intoxicating, right? It was like, oh my goodness, like this is the people that I want to be with. And it made me remember competing, right? And I was like, oh my, like this is it. How do I make it work though? So I ended up getting a job offer when I was down in California. Okay. Company will remain anonymous. But I ended up moving to California for a number of months and building a lot there. And then I had another job offer that I was prepared to move for, but the visa couldn't get approved for that one. So I was like, oh no. So I actually had to leave, and we did this like whole like travel thing of like, I got to go to Toronto, got to come back, got to go to Toronto, got to come back. And
for legal purposes.
Yeah. So like working with the US government and Canadian government for visas is tough. It's very difficult. And it should be, you know, in all honesty, it should be. So, and at the time esports was such in its infancy and still is.
Well, even now. Yeah.
Yeah. Even now for sure. So it's tough to kind of look at it that way. But, you know, I came back home and I was like, oh my God, like I don't have a job. What do I do? Right. I'm back at square one. Right. It's been like 7 months since I quit my job and I'm like, I can't go back.
Right.
I can't. Oh shit. Where are my savings? Right. So, I was lucky. I actually ended up, you know, through the connections that I made over the last couple of years before that, I received some phone calls and they're like, hey, like, you know, we heard you're back in town. We need some help. And, yeah, I ended up getting back in the swing of things, started doing more freelance consulting positions, live experiential events, working around the world. So I worked for a lot of AAA game developers, making sure the booths look nice around the world, which was really cool. Live events for TV shows as well. I got to go to San Diego Comic-Con with my little brother to work on a show that actually just finished their series, Mr. Robot, actually. So I worked on Mr. Robot during their season 2 premiere.
Robot, wow.
Yeah. So I helped with their live experiential San Diego Comic-Con activation, which was a really cool partnership with Uber. Yeah. That's one of my first big projects that weren't gaming.
I remember when you told me that story, and it was really funny.
Nuts. It's nuts. It was crazy. It was crazy. But yeah, I got to experience a lot and, you know, meet and rekindle my relationships with a lot of the gaming and esports community here in Toronto, and really meet the team that founded Waveform. And that's kind of how it all came together. I got to meet them all and, you know, spend a lot of time with them, live with them. And I was like, you know, like guys, like,
oh, you guys all lived together before.
Yeah. Before, well, they had lived together and I would visit because they were really close to where I lived. But then I would start helping them on the side. And then when we finally decided, it's like, oh, like, hey, like we can build Waveform together. Like this is a thing that we could do. This was about 2 years ago or just under 2 years. And I was like, this could be something great. This can be something, you know, very different. And something that is needed, right? And the amount of expertise under one roof is like, hey, like we can do more together than we could alone. And now we've got 2 offices. We've got one operating in Toronto, one in Montreal. We have a full studio that, you know, World Gaming just had their WSG Canadian tournament at, which is great, right? It's very different. It's so crazy. All started with a 12-year-old kid.
You gotta show me around there the next time we go. Like,
I mean, you guys are coming out to Montreal in a little bit, right?
So
it'll be cool. Yeah, for sure. And also the Toronto office for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like that journey, right? So long-winded answer.